How's it going, Knicks fans? Welcome back to yet another episode of Fireside Knicks with your hosts Dylan and Davin. And today we are going to talk about probably the biggest storyline that came out of the Knicks' third preseason game against the Timberwolves last night. Dante DiVincenzo. Yes, he had a couple moments yesterday where things got a little heated. He was seen barking at the Knicks bench during the first quarter of the game, and then after the game, he and Rick Brunson, the Knicks assistant coach, and Jalen Brunson's father at that, were going at it. So there's clearly some sort of rift going on. I don't really know entirely what. I don't know if it was just intense trash talk because the trade has only been, I think, 2 weeks old now, so it's still kind of fresh in everyone's mind, or if there's something deeper going on. There's clearly something, though, to watch for the rest of the way. And leading up until the next time these two teams play in about 2 months from now, this is going to be something to watch. It is now. All of a sudden, we have storylines now with this. Of course, Julius Randle was a part of that trade as well, but he did not play in yesterday's game, so there is nothing really to go about with that. I know there were some clips going around on Twitter after the game about, did he do something as well, but I didn't really see anything there. The focus is going to be on DiVincenzo, though, in this episode, because there is clearly something there, and we're going to talk about that. So, Davin, first off, tell me how you're doing, and secondly, do you think that there is some sort of feud going on between Dante DiVincenzo and the Knicks coaching staff?
Doing great, man. Thank you for asking. And to be quite honest with you, a feud, here or there. At the same time, I did speak with everyone on social media had their own opinion when this whole thing went down. How did they feel about it? What are players' emotions? This and that. And I said back then, I said Dante DiVincenzo has been quiet all summer. They were like telling me he just had a baby, this and that. Like Brunson just had a baby too, but DiVincenzo's been quiet this summer. He's been quiet. Not saying that the trade affected him in anything, bringing in Mikal Bridges, but we saw the season Dante just came off of, and I couldn't have expected. No one could anticipate this guy really taking a major step back like was anticipated of him. I didn't expect that. Now I don't think Dante had any issue with any teammates or players. Those are all his friends, but decision makers and coaching staff per se, I believe, may have played a factor in Dante being traded. And if that was the case, you can't blame him for much hostility. Now, the way things played out yesterday lets me know that maybe, they definitely were behind the scenes and things were said that maybe shouldn't have been. The words may have gotten back to Dante, things of that nature. And that's just kind of what we saw, kind of just boil over yesterday in a preseason game at that. So, like you said, built a great storyline for the season here. But Dante DiVincenzo, he's a Knicks legend in my opinion. I'm not going to say I'm not a Dante fan all of a sudden just because what happened yesterday. Emotions happen, things boil over, and that's kind of just what we saw.
Right, and the emotions didn't really just boil over. I mean, like you said, it's a preseason game. This is usually the time where the players are kind of just chilling. They're kind of figuring out their roles for the regular season, and then it's go time. But Dante seemed like he was playing with a chip on his shoulder with this one. Looked like he was trying to kind of prove a point, and I know there was the whole thing about what he said to Tom Thibodeau at the free throw line. Everyone at first thought he said thanks for the trade, but after seeing a bunch of videos and seeing Dante's response, that's not what he said. He said can't finish right, coach, or something like that. Which okay, I get it. It's just some little banter right there. The thing with Rick Brunson really is something that I want to watch for though, because in the post game, Dante was asked about the altercation he had with Rick Brunson, and he pretty much declined to say anything about it. He didn't say that he was joking like he did about Thibodeau. He said he was joking about Thibodeau, but in terms of the Brunson thing, he refused to talk about it. He said that he was going to, keep that to himself, and he didn't want to get into detail about that. So there's clearly something there with that. Now, I don't think it involves Jalen Brunson, because those guys are very well tied together. Those guys are really good friends. And Dante even said in his post-game quote that he's one of Jalen's best friends and all that stuff. Has nothing to do with them. It's Rick. Now, I don't know what it could be. I think you made a good point that there's clearly some sort of issue with decision makers that he's got. Maybe that, like you said, the fact that his role was going to look a lot different this upcoming season had he stayed on the Knicks because of the Mikal Bridges acquisition. It was going to be a different role for him. He wasn't going to be starting anymore. He was going to be coming off the bench. He was going to have significantly less shot opportunities as well. And when those reports last month or not last month, but a couple weeks ago had come out that he was unhappy in New York, which of course have since been debunked. He said himself that he was not unhappy in New York. But at the time that it came out, I mean, it made sense because as a player, I think I would be pretty upset too if I just had my best season and then they replaced me the next season. I would be pretty upset about it too. So not necessarily saying that Dante is happy that he got traded, but I think that he, yesterday looked like he kind of wanted to prove a point a little bit that hey, this is what you're going to be missing out on. You guys just traded away a good player in me, and now this is what you're going to miss out. Now, I will say, the hostility that he was having, it might have been a little excessive for a preseason game. I really don't really know what he was trying to exactly do, what he was aiming for. Like I said, it looked like he wanted to prove a point, but again, it's the preseason. If you want to prove a point, do it during the regular season. That's the way I see it. I'm not like calling out Dante for this because again, like you had just said too. I'm a fan of DiVincenzo too. I think he was great for us last season. He did so many great things. I was upset that he was gone, but at the same time, I don't think it's as big of a loss as some others make it to seem. But that's a different discussion we can have. Bottom line is that I don't really know why he was going at it with that in a preseason game. That's what really strings me, kind of strung me up a little bit. Like, it's a preseason game. What are you exactly trying to prove a little bit? I get it. The trade is still fresh. It's only been 2 weeks since it happened. He's probably still a little high-strung about it, probably still in shock, too. I'm sure all the players involved in that trade are still a little stunned about it. I mean, the trade just happened, and then he's already back at Madison Square Garden having to play a game against the team that just traded him away. So it's definitely some emotions running high and stuff like that. I definitely get it, but again, I don't know what he was aiming to do, and I kind of want to hear what you think he was trying to do because it was a little alarming. I mean, I was kind of like, when he was doing the trash talk during the first quarter, I was like, okay, he's just riling up the bench a little bit. But the Rick Brunson thing afterward was like, okay, what is going on? Why are you getting so mad at everybody on the Knicks organization? What happened? Like, there must be something. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, Dante, 6 teams in 6 seasons. I kind of just see that, just like I say, boiling over. I believe that emotion, and maybe someone maybe chirped at him even a little bit, and then like you said, he can't finish right. Whatever the coach was saying, he was yelling back to him. He was quoted, talking about something about someone else is running the show now. I don't know who was that towards Brunson, Rick Brunson, or Coach Thibodeau. They say it was towards Rick Brunson, but we just don't know. So I think Dante DiVincenzo went into that game yesterday with just a high motor, high intensity, letting these guys know he's coming for them. He's coming for them. And Anthony Edwards just totally been enamored with Dante DiVincenzo. Dante DiVincenzo is actually becoming a favorite in the Timberwolves organization. I saw that tweet yesterday, and they were talking about that, which is, Dante DiVincenzo, he deserves that right. He's a great player. Now, I will, if it's up to him, how he feels about being traded or not. But like I said, 6 teams in 6 seasons. That's really what that boils down to, man. No one wants, he said in the quote yesterday, he said, no one anticipated on being traded. I didn't expect to get traded. I didn't sign a 4-year deal for this. I expected to be here, but at the same time, no hate towards the fans, no hate towards my friends. But business is business, and that's kind of where that is. And that's kind of what we see it as. I definitely believe, like I said earlier, decision makers kind of just laid the law down with that one, and Dante kind of got the backhand on that deal. And that's just unfortunate circumstances of the business in the NBA, and that's just what we're seeing in real time. In Minnesota, there for Dante, he's going to thrive. I really think he will. It's not going to be a Dante hate piece or anything. I definitely think he's going to have a great time shining in Minnesota for all that he's capable of doing. And that's just kind of where we got to go, man. I believe these matchups going to be showtime this year, really much showtime matches. I can't wait to see Minnesota again in the regular season. But right now, imagine seeing those guys in the playoffs on the biggest stage. Legit, like, that'd be insane. But, yeah, right now, I'm not going to look too much into it. The Rick Brunson situation, that I have to actually look into Rick Brunson more because why are the coaches moving the way they're moving? You see what I'm saying? Like, why is this guy able to get off the bench and talk to a player the way he's talking to him? Because we saw that if you saw the initial thing right after the game ended, Rick Brunson said something to him, and he was taken aback by whatever Dante responded. And honestly, that doesn't even happen. None of that escalates if this guy doesn't say anything to the player at all. So let's kind of keep that relationship, player-coach on their own team. But don't be a coach from an opposing team going to an opposing player and on the floor. Let's do that behind the scenes. Let's do that off camera. Because now we're getting the quote from Dante saying he's not going to respond to it. But the Rick Brunson thing, it's going to be handled internally. Well, that should have been the case all along. And that's probably kind of where Dante was going with it when he was just kind of walking away. Because Rick was getting pretty pumped up about the whole entire thing. And I was like, okay, this guy, they got to get a guy in between these guys. Like, can you believe that? This is Rick Brunson. Like, so that's the only thing about it to me. Rick Brunson, great personality. Great coach, I believe he is. Jalen Brunson's father, regardless. I hear great things about him from players and interviews alike. So it's like, hey, okay. But at the same time, there's a level and there's a standard, so we got to keep things. And I don't believe that falling out the way it fell out should have even got to that point. Like, after he said something in the first quarter on the bench, he said something to you. Stroke your ego, may offend you a little bit, but don't handle that behind the scenes because you and this guy's son are best friends. You and your son are best friends with this guy. You guys can talk about this, off screen, off camera. So, but now we got a storyline that the whole entire family is going to eat up. I'm talking about Hoop Central, NBA Central, everyone, every Twitter account, Hollywood account you can think of was posting about Dante DiVincenzo and the New York Knicks yesterday. And now we got some real storylines going to take on this whole entire season.
Yeah, and I mean they were even talking about it on First Take this morning on ESPN. So it's clearly, one of the biggest storylines, not just in the Knicks realm, but in the entire preseason of the NBA right now. It's something that a lot of players and a lot of media members and stuff, they're going to be monitoring this the rest of the way. Honestly, up until their next meeting, which is about 2 months from now, December 19th in Minnesota is the next time these two teams will meet, and then in January they meet again at the Garden. So both of those games are going to be interesting to watch. Those games are all of a sudden now must-watch games. I mean, they were already kind of were because these are two very good teams that both have title aspirations on their hands this year. But now with this Dante DiVincenzo situation, they're really going to be circling this game now. Everyone's going to be really looking at that game being like, we need to watch that game. We need to see what goes on because, I think we all know that DiVincenzo is kind of a guy who's, he plays with a lot of aggression and a lot of passion. I think we saw that a lot last season, which of course I commend him for. He's a hard worker and all that stuff, but I think that energy is going to really, boil up some more energy the next time these two teams meet. If it got like that yesterday over a preseason game, just wait until the emotions are higher and the intensity is higher in the regular season. And who knows? These two teams are very good teams, so there is a possibility that they could end up meeting in the NBA Finals several months from now. Now imagine that, with this kind of rivalry that seems to be brewing. Now, of course, we won't get into all that because that's, several months from now is a possibility. The regular season hasn't even begun yet, right? But I think what we really need to, what is something to really focus on here, is what you mentioned about the handling and internally situation. I think really that stuff wouldn't have we wouldn't have had quotes from Dante about it had Rick Brunson not said anything. I think he would have just talked about the Thibodeau thing, what he said to him during the first quarter while he was at the free throw line, all that stuff. Now that Rick Brunson did that, though, you kind of set up DiVincenzo to have to, talk about it. And of course, now that he said he doesn't want to talk about it, now we're sitting here wondering, okay, is there actually some sort of beef going on between the two? It's kind of a cycle of why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is this? All this stuff going on, and we're going to be wondering that now for a while. Of course, I think, once the regular season begins, it'll kind of blow over a little bit until we end up meeting them again. But I do want to ask you this. Do you think that this situation and, with the trade and stuff, it's going to be kind of a distraction, especially if more stuff comes out during the season from DiVincenzo about his time with the Knicks, even when they're not playing against each other? Do you think it could be a distraction?
A wonderful segue because I was literally going to mention that at my next point. So this is the thing about it. With all the drama and escalating how everything kind of picked up when the trade initially happened, we didn't get too many answers. We didn't get too many opinions, not too many interviews. Julius didn't talk. Julius sent the thank you message on Instagram. Dante didn't say anything. But I believe words are going to come out. I believe things will be released to the public more throughout the season regarding their time in New York. Because the New York front office has had a great, a resurgence as far as their XP goes, as far as how they're looked overviewed amongst the league goes. And it's like that they can hit. If anything can take another team to take that down, they're going to do it. If they have a report that Dante or Julius had some time that wasn't the greatest time in New York, it's going to come out. And that's another angle I see. Julius Randle, yesterday we saw the video, the guy at the end. Who knows what that was all about? I'm not going to look too much into that. At the same time, I do know when they play in the regular season, he'll probably be back. I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee that Julius Randle is going to add to this equation, going to add a level of intensity to this equation, tenacity to this whole entire thing. That'll probably make it more of a rivalry than it is now. I believe what we've seen now is really just the beginning of this. When they see again with Julius Randle on the floor, he will bring a different intensity, and that will not sit well with Knicks players. It's just what it is because we know how Julius Randle plays. We know what opposing teams don't like playing against Julius Randle. He was on the Knicks. So imagine how he's going to play the Knicks themselves. You know what I mean? So it's like his tenacity, the way he plays, his ego and everything will definitely be something that we'll be seeing a lot of on the floor. And maybe they'll just chalk it up and call it, no big deal when the game's over. But I believe when these two teams meet on the floor, it's going to be a war. And I believe as the season progresses, there are going to be little things that come out to chip the Knicks stock a little bit as far as, player and personnel relations go. You know what I mean? Because the Knicks have been on a high lately. They've been riding a wave ever since they signed Jalen Brunson to a deal. And now Julius Randle, that whole entire trade's happened. Everyone's like, oh, we're happy it happened now. But at the same time, there's so much we don't know. Like, we thought he was going to come back. He even said he's willing to do or play any role. And the Knicks still were like, get out of here, man. So it's like, very interesting to see how that's going to come out. And I think things will come out about that.
It's a tough business, man. The NBA is a tough business. These guys, Randall and DiVincenzo, these guys were fan favorites last year. It seemed like that they were going to be a part of this Knicks core for not just this season, but for a while. So the trade not only shocked them, but it shocked everybody else. So, I mean, it sent shockwaves everywhere, right? And I think that ultimately that is what's kind of the root behind all this drama right now with DiVincenzo and stuff. It's still a fresh shock in his mind. I don't think he expected to get traded, especially after they were the media and stuff was hyping up the whole Nova Knicks collective thing, hyping up those four guys with Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, and DiVincenzo. It seemed like that DiVincenzo was off the table. Didn't seem like he was going to get moved at all. So to him it was probably like, oh, that's how you really feel? You feel like I'm not that important? I'm going to show you that I'm an important player then. So, I get it, and I get why he's upset about it. I get that there's some frustration there. Obviously, we only know so much about it because he's only willing to say so much. But like you said, I could very well see more things coming out this season, especially if DiVincenzo starts to really blossom into a big role in Minnesota. I think we're really going to start to see, some stuff come out about the differences between that role versus what it was in New York, and all that kind of stuff. And one thing I want to add too, that this is a little bit different than like when the Knicks traded away R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly last season. R.J. Barrett's a pretty mellow guy. He didn't really have much to say about it. He was thankful for his time, but kind of just left it at that. Obviously, we know Emmanuel Quickly was very sad that he got traded, but was thankful for his time. Didn't feel any like resentment or anything like that. Was just happy to move on, all that stuff. And also, no disrespect to the Raptors, but they're not a very good team. So, I think those guys are aware of that too, and they know that there's a rebuild there. They need to just focus on that and not worry about, the past. And of course, I think they also know that the Knicks have bigger aspirations ahead of them, so it was meant for the better of them. But with Randall and DiVincenzo, I feel like in a way they probably feel disrespected a little bit, just because of all the success that they gave them last season, and of course Randall in the seasons prior, and then all of a sudden they're gone. So to them, they might have felt a little bit of disrespect. And I would understand it if that is the case. If DiVincenzo feels upset about it, I get it. Like you said, he's been on several teams now in many different seasons. He's been on like the Bucks, the Kings, the Warriors, the Knicks, and now the Wolves. It's been, kind of just a crazy past few seasons for him. For a guy that's been a pretty solid role player too at that, he's a guy who's quickly becoming a journeyman, which I don't think he wants to do. I think he wants to have an established home. And he probably thought New York was that place when he signed a 4-year contract. And he, like you said, he even said it. He said, I didn't expect to sign a 4-year deal and then get traded 1 year later. I don't think anyone expects that. I didn't expect it. I did not expect DiVincenzo to be traded this offseason. And I wish that we still had him. I think he would have been useful for the bench, but at the same time, from a basketball standpoint, I understand why they did it. The trade for Towns was necessary. It was a trade that not only makes the Knicks better, but it completes their roster. So it was necessary to do it. And I hope that all parties can kind of, see that it was meant to happen that way. It just needed to be from a basketball standpoint. But from a personal standpoint, I get it. Nobody wants to get traded again. Nobody wants to get dealt, especially that close to the regular season too, when it seems like you're gearing up for training camp and then boom, all of a sudden you're going to a different team. You got to learn a brand new system and all that in about 3 weeks, because you have 3 weeks essentially to learn it all before the start of the regular season. So I totally understand that. But again, I just don't want this to be a distraction. I really don't. I think the last thing the Knicks need is a massive distraction that's blocking them from really trying to achieve their goal, which of course is to make the NBA Finals. I really don't want this kind of rift, I guess, that our former players are having with our coaching staff to really feel that way. I don't want that to be a distraction. I don't. I don't really have much else to say about this whole situation other than it's something to monitor the rest of the way, and it will definitely be something to watch for the next time these two teams meet up, especially if DiVincenzo and Randall are both out on the floor. It'll really be something to watch for. But one thing I want to ask you, is there anything else really you got to add to this? Do you think that this is an issue that can get resolved quickly, or do you think this is going to kind of linger over throughout the season?
So they said things will be handled internally. That's he said, she said. I believe things will be kind of just left alone. I don't believe they're going to do handling too much. That he saw the body language, and not a body language expert, but I don't think these guys are too much in the business of talking and handling things out. If they waited all this time and then it fell out like they've done on the floor, they haven't been talking behind the scenes anyway. So, that's just kind of what it is. Dante doesn't get too chirpy either. He's not one to really talk too much trash. So the fact that he even culminated to that, like I said, I don't think we've seen the end of this. And when Julius Randle gets back, it's going to get a whole lot more interesting between these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And, I think at the end of the day, it's going to get a lot more interesting when these two teams play, especially, like you just said, if DiVincenzo and Randall are both on the floor together. Again, I don't want this to be a major distraction, though. That's the one thing I really want. I don't want this to linger over throughout the season. I want this to kind of just be something that just stays right here, stays in the preseason. We don't really hear much about it again the rest of the way. It's definitely going to be interesting to watch though, because I honestly did not expect yesterday's preseason game, especially the preseason, like I just said, to really boil over into something like this heated rivalry. It had that game had a bit of a playoff feel to it, which is exciting always to watch. But I think the intensity of from what DiVincenzo was providing really kind of sparked that energy in the building a little bit. Those guys were really seeing that this guy is chirping at us. This guy who's just with us is now, feeling some sort of, personal things to him. So, he's letting his energy out there a little bit. But again,
Yeah.
I understand why he was frustrated. I get it. And at the end of the day, we'll just see what happens the rest of the way. But guys, I don't have much more to say about this. Let us know what you think about Dante DiVincenzo and this whole situation in the comments section below. We would love to hear about it because this is definitely one of the biggest storylines to come out from the Knicks. Not only just this entire offseason, but now right here in the preseason before the regular season starts, we have a massive storyline. So we would love to hear about it. Give us your thoughts on the comment section below. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, of course this YouTube page that you are watching the video on. You can follow our personal Twitter accounts. They are above our heads. And we will see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out.